So this is an article from 2019, again from Oklahoma Policy Institute, that talking about the first kind of big voucher bill that got increased this year. It's called the Oklahoma Equal Opportunity Education Scholarship Act, which grants tax credits to individuals or corporations who make a donation to a scholarship granting organization or an educational improvement grant organization. And then SGOs award scholarships for students to attend participating K through 12 private schools. And while much less utilized, the EIGO award grants to qualified public schools. Currently, the total amount of tax credits that donors can claim per year is $5 million. There have been past bills, this was from 2019, that would increase it to 20 and 60 million respectively. I think this session it increased it to 50 million. So it's a 10x increase. And what's crazy about this from a policy standpoint is, one, the Oklahoma Constitution, which they've tried to rip it out in the past and failed because, again, voters don't like unpopular shit, is the Oklahoma Constitution has, I believe it's Article 12, that says you cannot give public money to sectarian things. So basically, it's you can't give tax dollars to private religious schools. Like, it's just not. It was put in there because the early framers of the Constitution were very anti-Catholic, and so it's to stop Catholic schools from getting that money. But it functions now today as just a check on public money going to private schools. So they got to create this like goofy scholarship thing where you give the money to another organization and then they give it to the private religious school. So I mean, it's already like a real bad faith thing. But then like we should think about who is donating this money and who has the money to donate to then pay for private education. And they try to spin this as hard as they can that somehow this is helping low-income kids. And I have no idea what their definition of low income is, but of course it's not actual low income because, I mean, if you have a household income of $50,000 a year and private school costs $7,500, like that's 15% of your income. Like you're just not able to do that. I mean, like right. It's just from a budget standpoint, it's not possible for a truly low income household to fully pay for private school. Mm-hmm. So this is like a way of getting around it. Like it's a way to subsidize private schools. It's a way for people to like get a, tax credit back if you donate to an organization that donates to a private school. So very convoluted, very much against the letter of the Oklahoma Constitution or the spirit of it. And it really ultimately just benefits middle and high income families that want to send their kid to private school, which, like you want to send your kid to private school, like that's on you. That's why it's private. That's why they can discriminate. They can, that's why they don't have the same rules because they're private. And if you want to do that, that's your money. You go do that. But like the idea that now we're basically subsidizing it is not cool and very unpopular according to public polling.
Well, and it's like that outrageous amount of money. Imagine that going to our public schools. It's so much money and it could be put to I'm not going to say better use, within public hands and within our like superintendent and these teachers who are doing the hard work and getting more classes, because those private schools are able to control their population, right? They're able to say, no, we have 15 students in our kindergarten class, which is scary to me, but they're able to really minimize those distractions and that burden on teachers in ways that public schools don't have any decision about how many students are in their classes. They can't say, oh, I'm sorry, we're full. All they have to do is build onto the school and put students in like prefabs and things like that. So it's an incredible amount of money that could go to help like the greater population of Oklahoma, but people don't want to do that. They want to help their individuals, and they want to help their own kids. And somehow that, loses its effectiveness when you say, well, what about all Oklahomans? I've always had the idea that, my parents put me in public school. and my partner went to a charter school, and I give him shit about it 100% of the time. You know, I'm like, if people really want to have their kids have a better education, why do you not work hard to make sure every child has that level of education? Are you so wrapped up in like, my kid needs to have a better education than everybody else? Like, does that
Yes,
put
they
them
are.
ahead? Yeah, I mean, it is, but I just think there's so much good that could be done, you know. And my parents, you know, I grew up very privileged, that the fact that my parents were both college professors, and so, you know, if I was not learning enough about culture or, you know, what have you in my classes, my parents like took that mantle up themselves
Right.
and took me to museums and, you know, took me to the library every day and things like that. So there are ways to better your child's education, you know, and give them the leg up, which seems like you're really going to crush a kindergartner to get your kindergartner to a better place. That's okay. You know, and so it's so hard to see people choosing to better the one and like leaving millions of children behind.
Well, and I think it's worth pointing out, too, that they increased education funding because the way they have to do this from a budget standpoint is in order to pay for this tax credit, they have to budget for it. Like, because people could go out and use all 50 million of it. I'm skeptical that's going to happen, but, you know, we never know. But only 10% of kids in the state go to private schools anyway. So even if like all of them start using this tax credit thing, you know, it's probably not even going to change the number of private school kids, like people actually going to private school. It's just going to like subsidize already wealthy people who already send their kids to private school. Now they get to take advantage of this tax credit. But like, so they gave 50 million basically in subsidies to private schools, while they only gave 170 million to the traditional public schools, where 90% of the kids in the state go. So it's like when you start comparing like the education funding, I mean, it's like you're giving this very small group of mostly already wealthy people a huge bonus while giving only a slightly larger amount to the vastly larger group spread across the entire state. So it's really, it's very much like again, tilting the table. And, you know, going back to like what you were saying about your parents and privilege and all that. I mean, I grew up similarly. I went to a suburban high school in Maryland that was fairly affluent. I mean, there's tons of evidence that like rich folks invest heavily in their kids in all manners of ways regarding education. And so, like, again, like this isn't the group that needs the state to super fund their thing. I mean, they are already doing it. Like, I mean, the per pupil spending at like your Cassidy's and Cassia Halls and Heritage Halls of the world are 3 times what the state spends on an average public school kid. So,
Yeah.
I mean, like they
And
don't
it's
need it. They're
intense.
fine.
Like, already these people and parents are like donating so much to these schools. I've hosted a variety of these private school fundraisers and coordinated them. And I was like, they're like, oh, we're gonna have raffle items. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. What are they? Like a spaghetti gift basket? And they were like, no, it's 2 tickets to Hamilton on Broadway and
Yeah.
two like nights in a hotel in New York. And I was like, okay, what are the other ones? You know, thinking that's
Yeah.
like the grand prize. And they're like, oh, it's a week-long tour of a chalet in Colorado, and it can
Yeah.
sleep up to 11 people. And people were like, I mean, I would lose my shit over it because it was still when Lin-Manuel Miranda was in Hamilton. So, like, I get it. But people were like
Oh
paying
yeah.
so much money. And I was
Making it
like,
rain for it. Yeah.
I did not charge enough for this event. You know, but it's like there's already so much that goes into it in like behind the scenes. Like I'm thinking of Big Little Lies when they help host the fundraiser for all of the parents, and they're, you know, there's so much alcohol and it's all of this, you know, elaborate staging, and it's like, look, we all have to give up, and it's like PTA on steroids. Like
No,
my PTA sold popcorn and pickles.
right. No, and I can give you like an example, like a hyper local example. Like I ran for a school board seat in Oklahoma City and got beat out by someone with a ton of money, but I knocked a ton of doors. And the area that I would have represented was north central Oklahoma City, including Nichols Hills, which is what our big old money community in Oklahoma City. They're not part of the municipality, but they are part of the school district. Knocking doors in Nichols Hills, like I found out that Nichols Hills Elementary Their PTA could raise over $200,000 every single year. They literally bought them a gymnasium. Like, they built from scratch a gym at the school. Not 1 mile down the road of Wilshire, which is the road that runs right by the school, runs through the heart of Nichols Hills, was North Highland Elementary. And they couldn't even find a fucking principal to work there because the school was in such bad shape structurally, like just the environment. Like, they literally could not hire a principal because no one would take the job. That's how bad it was. And it was a mile away, right across the train tracks, in a neighborhood right off of Wilshire. And I mean, I'm sitting there like knowing this. Like, I knocked doors in North Highland and was like, I really want to get some resources here for y'all. And then I knocked doors in Nichols Hills, and just, I mean, that they could be like that close in the same school district. And what ended up happening with Pathway to Greatness, which I fully supported, was a lot of those kids got merged into Nichols Hills so that they have access to resources now too. But it's, the state could fix this. The state could allocate money to address this, and instead we're going the opposite way, helping to subsidize rich private school kids,
Yes.
while schools a mile apart from each other look like they are in two different countries.